I've heard, and it's been said, that if you don't have an income plan, you really don't have a retirement plan. Today, in this episode, we're going to find out, is that true?
Welcome to another edition of Power Your Retirement. I'm Walter Storholt alongside Steve Smith of Powerhouse Financial Advisors, and we've got a great show on the way today as we're going to be diving into this topic of income planning. How important is it? What does it really mean? You're going to come across this buzzword if you're planning for retirement or thinking about your finances in the future, so it's going to be really important to get to the bottom of this. Right before we jump in, though, Steve, I hope you're doing well. It's great to have you here on one of your first podcast episodes. Welcome to YouTube and the Powerhouse and Power Your Retirement podcast.
Thank you, Walter. I'm really excited to talk about some of these fundamentals that many times are misunderstood.
Well, you said it right there, fundamentals, and that's what income planning is. I imagine that buzzword's going to come up with any client that you're going to meet with. So let's dive into the conversation a little bit here. And you mentioned in your tease and in your intro, Steve, that it's been said if you don't have an income plan, you really don't have a retirement plan, because that's the crux of it. Do you agree with that, first of all? I do. And unfortunately, the answer is not quite as straightforward as what I might prefer, because money and retirement planning isn't straightforward either. But an income plan is usually critical, because when you're saving for retirement, whether that's through a traditional means like an employer 401k, or maybe non-traditional, you're collecting homes and rents and things of that nature, you're trying to figure out, how do I transition from making money working to, in the accumulation phase, to pulling money from investments. And that's really what we need to focus on. One quick tip as we just kick this right off, Stephen Covey, one of my mentors, from his book, is that begin with the end in mind. And that's really the income plan for retirement. How am I going to live after I stop working? So that is really what we try to help folks with. I like that. Begin with the end in mind. So that leads me to think, you're meeting with clients each and every week, and new prospective clients, Steve. So how many people, if you kind of think back over the past year or two, what's the percentage of folks that are walking in with a true income plan, with a true retirement plan? I guess, who is coming to you already thinking about that end in mind?
Well, at Powerhouse, we specialize working with employees that have robust 401ks. And that is, if not the number one, the number two question people come in, they say, how am I doing for retirement? So what they're really saying is, am I on track to be able to transition from this paycheck that I get every 2 weeks to living on my investments? So it is top of mind. How many actually have it all figured out? Very low percentage, less than 5%. Some have an idea, but that's really why they're coming to me, is to help them with that fundamental question, am I okay?
People have done a good job saving into their 401ks, it sounds like, when they come in to meet with you, but why are so many people then unprepared for that transition, for that retirement planning step? Why is there such a need for somebody like you, Steve, to help them then shepherd through the rest of that process?
Thanks for all the difficult questions, Walt. Everybody wants to know this, so thank you for asking them. The main thing that people need to know is that many people underestimate. Many times, they even underestimate by up to 50% of what they really need for retirement to maintain their lifestyle. And the reason is, it's very complex. You've got to figure out Social Security. You have to figure out, for you, and if you're married, a spouse, what is your spouse doing? Do they have some kind of savings on the other side? Because a lot of these 401k plans only evaluate what the employee has themselves. And there's also, were you late to the game with mortgage? Is that going to go into retirement? Obviously, it would be best if it didn't, but that's not the case for a lot of folks. So there's so many things, income streams that are fixed, income streams that are from investments. Maybe there's a second home that's creating some rents. Maybe there's inheritance. It's such a complex question that it really needs software and professional guidance to put it together with any probability of certainty.
Makes a lot of sense. And I can kind of see why people are just not experienced. I mean, putting money into your 401k, in theory, even if you're not actively, making that decision every 2 weeks, is something that's at least happening constantly. And you're seeing it grow and be contributed to over the course of your career. But as you make that transition to thinking about retirement, well, now you're entering into a zone where you've never done that before. And it'll be the kind of the one and only time you do it.
And unfortunately, there's no do-overs with retirement. You're either ready for it or you're not, or you choose to work longer than maybe your body or your retirement plan wanted to.
Well, I think this is a great spot where we can also draw the difference between just the average person out there planning for retirement versus folks who are in your specialty, in your expertise here, Steve, with folks that are, utility workers and in these particular 401ks that you have intimate knowledge of. So can you take us through maybe the general steps that you take when you meet with clients to guide them to an effective income plan or retirement plan? And maybe what are some of the particulars in the nuances of this particular groups that you work with?
One of the big advantages that I have is I have a deep knowledge of the retirement plan itself, because it's not as straightforward as some are. There's matches, there's tiers. When did you become an employee? Do you have a traditional pension? Do you have a cash balance pension? Or do you have a profit sharing plan? And I help employees to understand what they have and also understand what they will have at retirement. And that process, we first go over what they have, the great benefits if they have any kind of retirement medical. And each company is a little bit different, but also even within one company, there may be multiple tiers based on date of hire that can be different. And it gets very confusing around the water cooler because not everybody knows what those dates are and what they have. So I help kind of straighten that out. And then we go deeper dive if there's a fit, and we do a full retirement plan. I'm a certified financial planner, which is just a fancy way of saying we dive deep because we don't like to get things wrong. So we do a full plan for folks, and that's pulling in their full financial status.
Yeah, I think that's extremely helpful. This is a great chance to remind you as well, if you're trying to learn a little bit more about retirement, if you are an employee of a large publicly traded utility, you're right in the wheelhouse of the folks that Steve Smith is helping each and every single day. And so if you want to tap into that knowledge of a certified financial planner, if you want to look a little bit more closely at what that relationship looks like and a lot of the opportunities that are available to you in your specific situation, I think it's a great idea to pick up a copy of Steve's book. It's called Power Up Your 401k. Everything's related to power and 401ks here on the show. And you can get that book, your free copy, by going to powerupyour401k.com. That's powerupyour401k.com. Get a copy of Steve's book. It's a great starting point to learn a little bit more about retirement planning, why you have some specific opportunities because of your employment and your job and your career, and how all of those things mesh together. So check out that resource and get a free book today. So Steve, I'm wondering if maybe to wrap up today's episode, you could give us an example. I love case studies. I love where we can maybe see how you were at work with somebody who might be in a similar situation to somebody else viewing or listening to today's episode. Can you take us through somebody that came to you that didn't have a great income plan or retirement plan in place, and maybe some of the details and the moves that you made to make sure that that income question was taken care of?
The classic one that I'm thinking of, because it happens very, very frequently, is someone comes to me about 10 years before they retire because they're starting to ask these questions. Okay, what does it look like in 10 years? When I'm 60 or 62 or 65, depending on the person. And they come to me, and typically they're coming from using some kind of target date fund in their 401k plan that they've kind of picked the date that they'd like to retire.
Okay.
And what I do is I bring in a knowledge that the cash balance pension is part of this, because the target date fund if there's other benefits like that, or maybe there's something with the spouse just unrelated, we have to look at the holistic plan, because many times when they come to me, they think that they're invested properly for retirement. But when we actually do a deep dive, whether it's with things like the cash balance pension that is a benefit of theirs, or maybe the spouse works for the state and has a full pension, the allocation is very wrong, because the target date fund doesn't know you or your situation at all. It just has one methodology. So that is probably the biggest thing that happens in that time frame, that 10 years out, that is a wake-up call to folks that they had no idea, just assumed that that was the right thing to do.
Oh, wow. That's great. And so they get into your planning process and all of that gets turned into the right direction. And I know we can't go into the very deep specifics, at least not on today's episode. I'm sure we'll have some future ones where we dive into the specifics of someone's plan and get to see how this all comes together. But I think a great overview today, as we've just started the new podcast and YouTube series here, income planning. If you're new to that concept, hope you learned a little bit of something on today's episode. There is so much more to this to learn and to benefit from. That's why you should check out that book. One more time, just a quick reminder, go to powerupyour401k.com and you can get the free book, Power Up Your 401k. So check that out. Steve, thank you for your help, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Walt.
Yeah. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're watching this episode on YouTube. It helps us grow. And hey, share the episode with somebody else who you think might find the information helpful. In the meantime, we'll see you next time right back here on Power Your Retirement. This podcast is provided by Powerhouse Financial Advisors, an independent firm with advisory services offered through Parsonex Advisory Services, Inc., PAS, a federally registered investment advisor. The information provided is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered as personalized investment advice. PAS does not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or suitability of this information for your specific circumstances. Investment decisions should be based on an individual's goals, time horizon, and risk tolerance. Past performance is not indicative of future results, and all investments carry a degree of risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any case studies, testimonials, or endorsements shared in this podcast are illustrative of individual experiences and may not be representative of the experience of all clients. They do not guarantee future performance or success. You should not infer any level of assurance regarding future financial outcomes. Listeners should consult with a qualified financial, tax, or legal professional before making any investment decisions. Parsonex Advisory Services, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Be sure to consult with your tax and legal professionals regarding your specific circumstances. For a copy of our Form ADV Part 2A, which provides additional information about PAS, including our advisory fees and services, please visit powerhousefinancialadvisors.com.